In Europe, we tend to link nowadays the word refugee to young men, but in fact, 70% of the refugees are actually women and children. 75% of the refugees are actually living in the neighboring countries of Syria, not in Europe. And the fact that actually more than 2/3 of those people, if you imagine them, women, children, stresses that the most urgent needs are connected actually to health care, education, water, basic energy services, things that keep life going on. Financing, in that sense, that about...
Today's workshop comes at a very critical time as we enter into the 70 years of the Syria crisis, when more sustainable responses are required. As we know, the Syria crisis is not only challenging what we can call the traditional conflict resolution mechanism, but it's also challenging the way that we work together, private sector, NGOs, governments in the regions, and the UN. Expanding partnerships and exploring new ways of cooperation amongst humanitarian and development players, private sector, NGOs, and the UN is a central component of the resilience building agenda.
200 million euro deal in Zambia, just...
In Syria particularly, around 40% of children and youth are not able to go to school at all. And if you look at in general, I mean, we can see one generation that is already kind of lost if we don't do anything just now. So we should really start acting quickly with different kind of education activities in there.
Are very strong forerunners already nowadays.
The Connecting Business Initiative aims to transform the way the private sector engages before, during, and after crises to create more resilient communities, increase local capacity, and alleviate human suffering. In a nutshell, it is private sector driven, it responds to a clear and stated need, and it links global and local capacities.
Looking at the markets in Syria, within Syria, there's a lot of challenges actually how to get to those users. How do you make users aware of the technology? So traditional mechanisms have been to spread flyers or organize town meetings, but in an infrastructure, in a country where the infrastructure has collapsed and where crisis and war and aggressive and violence are every day present, it is difficult to do it.
This year, 2017, and if there is demand and resources.
Most of the youth of today actually has access to mobile devices, whether they're smartphones or just connected devices. And using this mechanism to access the youth, we can spread with FUNSI the reach of existing education programs, such as the ones that Finn Church Age operates in the refugee camps in Jordan for the Syrian refugees.
The important thing is that just now we should start planning for the reconstruction. And reconstruction, if we don't plan it now and then when the peace comes, you know, we're in trouble actually. And quite often in humanitarian emergencies, we leave that and we go only for the acute situation and aid and leave that. So that's very important at the moment.
Sort of, we're trying to send a signal that it could help, but it isn't.